Morning. I'm going to share a personal story about my life to drive a point home as it relates to your own life. I spent a big chunk of my life as a Canadian in America without papers, without documents. And people would always say to me, "But you're white. You should get a job." I'm like, "It doesn't work that way." So I spent most of my 20s pinching pennies because I was so broke and I had to work under the table. And recently, I officially became legal in America, and I'm really grateful for my path. It wasn't easy at all, though. Now that I'm a little older, I'm 39, I can see how I chose a really tough path. Now, the upside is that I really matured as a soul. The downside is I put myself through more than I needed to. Now that I'm a little more mature, I see that I could have stayed in Canada and that I could have simply purchased a home in Florida without needing to get legal. Do I regret my decision? No. But I've learned a valuable lesson in life, which is that if something doesn't feel good to you, if you're pressuring yourself to launch a business, if you're pressuring yourself to quit your job or to leave your relationship, that decision will not come from the right place and the right space. It's coming from the ego being impatient or the ego being overly eager. And what you'll find on this journey is that the universe has a balancing sheet. It's always going to balance out what you do that isn't from the highest place, because you weren't really listening, because you weren't patient, because you were too eager to get things going. The universe doesn't care what you do. It wants you to be in love with yourself. It wants you to treat yourself kindly. It wants you to be good to yourself. So whether you choose Avenue A or Avenue B, if there's one thing I've learned is that we live in a sort of a simulation. This is like a virtual reality game. So if you choose Avenue A, that's going to come with a set of issues. If you choose Avenue B, that will come with a set of issues. It's just that Avenue B might be less stressful. It might be the longer path, but because you're in alignment, everything will eventually work out. Now, the good news is that both Avenue A and Avenue B lead to the exact same place. The question is, how are you going to feel when you're in Avenue A versus Avenue B? A lot of us choose the harder path because we want what we want now. See, I was determined to stay in the US, and I made it. I'm really happy. But I also didn't have access to the bigger perspective. I couldn't see because I was so caught up in my fear. I was so caught up in my ambition and my determination that I didn't see at the time that when I get older, I could just buy a place in Florida. And that's just an example. So I want you to know I don't regret my decisions. What I'm saying is you don't have to do anything you don't want to do if it doesn't feel good to you. Because the universe has your back and everything's going to come out in the wash in the end anyways. If you don't feel like doing a driver's exam, guess what? You don't have to. You can go live in New York. The universe isn't going to judge you for doing that. You're honoring yourself. Or do the driver's exam, right? Do the driver's exam because you're looking forward to driving. At least you're fighting for something you love. That's why I don't regret my decision, is because I fought for something I wanted and I got it. All I'm trying to say is that there are different avenues that you can take. That's all I'm saying. So don't force yourself to do something you don't want to do because that's not coming from the highest place. And the way the universe works is it's going to eventually have to give you an adjustment because you made that decision from that lower place, right? You might catch a disease. You might fall ill. Something is going to happen, and it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but something is going to happen to readjust you later on. So be very mindful of the choices that you're making. Are they coming from a place of unconditional love towards yourself, or are they coming from a place of pressure? And I get it. You want what you want. You want to get things going, but just know that if you choose the path where you're feeling pressured, that's going to come with more issues. The good news is you're going to get what you want faster. The bad news is you're not going to feel good on your road to that, on the journey to that. So be mindful of what you're choosing right now, because it doesn't matter. Everything comes out in the wash. The universe balances everything out. And sometimes people get sick, or not always, but sometimes people get sick because they're so stubborn and they're not listening and they're not getting in tune with the universe. So the universe has to eventually bring them to their knees through an illness, a disease, a breakup, whatever, has to bring them to their knees so that they start listening, so that they slow down. Why is it so important to slow down? Because when we're moving slowly, we're present. We're not forcing ourselves to do what we don't want to do. We're in alignment with the universe. But so many people are too eager to achieve their goals, and they feel like shit the whole time. And eventually they catch some sort of a illness. That's because they weren't listening to the universe. This journey isn't about what you acquire. It's about getting in tune with your internal world, with the universe, with source, with God. That's what it's about. And understanding that time is an illusion. Even if you get what you want tomorrow, there are still lessons to face. There are still lessons to learn. So you might as well attend class, your internal classroom, so that you can learn those lessons now, and that way you have an enjoyable life. But I think that we've been conditioned to choose the hard path because we weren't loved properly. We weren't nurtured properly. So we're very hard on ourselves. So learn to love yourself more, my friends. Don't force yourself to do things you don't want to do. If you don't want to go to college right now, you're like, oh, I don't want to go. I just want to focus on my music. Focus on your music. The world is going to tell you you're crazy. Your parents are going to tell you, what are you doing? Da, da, da. You need to get an education. They're going to tell you all these things. I'm not dissuading you from getting an education, but listen to your heart, because your heart will always lead you to the highest place. You can follow your parents' orders or society's orders, but you'll be miserable. You have to believe in the unseen. You have to. And again, when you believe in the unseen, what you want may take longer to happen because you're choosing to learn those lessons along the way, right? People who are trying to get things now are not learning lessons. They're so focused on the prize that they're actually not tending to their emotions throughout that journey. And then they have to learn those lessons later in life. You know, it's kind of like me. If I had slowed down, I would have seen, you can stay in Canada, save money, and eventually buy a place in Florida, right? And instead, I chose to come to LA at 22 and really struggle, and I don't regret it. But I see that I could have chosen wiser. That's all I'm saying. So remember, when you don't tend to your emotions, when you're not in a space of self-love throughout your journey, it's eventually going to backfire. The universe is going to hit you with the metaphoric baseball bat to put you in your place, to show you there's another way, there's an easier way, there's a more loving way. It's going to do that. It has to, because it loves you. It wants you to understand that you're here to crack the code of this reality, that you're here to choose love. Forget the material stuff. Forget what you think you want, because all of that is just superficial. It's materialistic. Focus on your internal growth. Okay? Some people want it too soon, and they bypass all the lessons. And eventually, the universe says, okay, cool, I'll put you in your place. I'll put you in a headlock, and so that you learn your lessons. And that's a valid path. It's just a path filled with suffering. If instead you take your time in life and you're with yourself, you're in touch with your emotions, yes, it might be the longer path, but it'll be a more enjoyable path. There might be longer waiting periods, but in the end, you'll still get where you want to get to. Doesn't matter if you choose Avenue A or B. Again, we're like in a simulation. So choose you. Choose you. All right? That's my best advice for you today. I love you.